welcome back to the How to Podcast series. I have another great guest joining me from somewhere different than Canada, which is great because I get to talk to people around the world, and my guest today travels the world. He is set up with his portable little studio joining us, and I'm excited to have Steve on the podcast. We're going to talk about his podcast, getting it all set up, getting it running, and we got lots of questions to go through. So if you're a new podcaster and you have a list of questions, Steve's going to probably ask them for you. So we're going to have a great conversation. Steve, welcome to the How to Podcast series.
Well, thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this. Should be good.
Excellent. Well, I'll let everybody know where you're from originally, but now where you are in the world right at the moment.
Okay. I grew up in central Minnesota, small farm. We didn't actually, my family, we didn't actually farm for a living, but my dad just liked to be away from people. So got 80 acres out in the middle of nowhere. And, now I'm getting to that point in life where I completely understand where his thought process was. So it's, but I spent, after I left Minnesota early and I was in the military, I was in the Army, I bounced around for a little bit. And then I ended up in Las Vegas, of all places, and spent, I'd say the majority of my adult life, I guess, was in Vegas. But then I decided, I had a real estate company there. I had worked the nightlife for a while. I worked in nightclubs. I worked in strip clubs. I did some personal bodyguarding. I was fighting Muay Thai. I was having, it's kind of this weird life. And I eventually settled into a real estate career. And then in 2008, obviously the market crashed and I got my ass handed to me. So I didn't really, took a lot out of me. I got wiped out completely financially. I got a divorce and everything. And I really just didn't have the heart. Real estate was very profitable, made a lot of money, but I didn't love it. So I didn't really have the heart to rebuild what I'd built in 10 years and got wiped out in a year. So I decided to move to Mexico. And I packed my dog, 2 suitcases and a box in my car, and I drove from Vegas down to Playa del Carmen, which is about an hour south of Cancun on the Caribbean. And
nice.
Let me see, I was there for 5 years, I think. And then went back to Vegas for a little bit, and then went to Phoenix, and then went back to Mexico. And then I decided I was going to break out of the Western and go wander around a little bit. So I've been all over, currently in the Philippines right now, in Manila.
Nice. Amazing. Well, to have time with you was great. And I'm glad that we're going to talk about podcasting because it's one thing I love to talk about. And anybody that wants to spend a few minutes to chat with podcasting with me, I'm like, yes. And my wife is like, yes, because you can stop annoying me with all this podcasting talk. Go talk to your podcast friends. So I'm here with you and I'm excited to do this. So tell me where you are on the podcast journey. I think we're kind of at the beginning stages for your show. Can you kind of give us a sense of where we're starting from?
Yeah, I am at the very beginning. I should be launching the show here in about a week or two. I'm pretty much ready to launch. Good. I've got about 24 episodes recorded, but I've been making sure that everything was in place to launch in terms of getting a website, getting the the right platform that fit what I was looking for, because I do a video one like you. So, a lot of them are just purely audio based. So I wanted to make sure I got the right video one that would also host a website for the podcast. And now, and this, it's probably a question for you. I don't know if it'll make any difference, but I was like, okay, I'm pretty much ready to rock. So I was thinking in about 2 weeks, because I'm going to leave here in the Philippines. I'm going to go back to Mexico. And it's going to be kind of a different spot than I was in before. I was going to be in Monterrey. So it's in the mountains of northern Mexico. But I'll be stable for a little bit. So I was like, okay, it's a good time to launch, really focus on promoting and marketing, which I haven't a faintest clue how to do yet, but I'll figure that out. It's all part of the journey. And then I was like, okay, so I'll launch in about 2 weeks. And then I realized that, 2 weeks is Halloween. So I'm like, are people going to be a little too busy or caught up in that? I don't know if that really makes any difference. I'm probably overthinking it. What do you think on launching that?
Okay, so have you ever seen like a retail store that opens and they have what's called a soft opening, where the store is not officially open, the grand opening is going to happen later, but they kind of open the store all the employees get to try to learn how to use the cash register, answer the phone, figure out how to do their job. They're all new hires. Nobody knows what they're doing, but they do like a soft opening. They just open the doors. They don't say much, but people can come in and shop, but they just don't make a big deal of it. In podcasting, I would kind of say that's one good way of launching your show before you tell the world. Get everything running, get everything the way you like it. The world doesn't even know about your show yet. It's been 20 plus years and no one's ever heard of your podcast. So even if somebody stumbles through the door and goes, hey, what's this new podcast? They're welcome. Come on in. But we're just kind of figuring everything out. We haven't told anybody yet that we're live. And it gives you a chance to kind of ease into this without this big launch, air quote launch, that everybody plans for. Having a big launch for your podcast is like, and that equating to being a successful podcaster is almost like saying, if I have a really big, expensive wedding, I'm going to have a great marriage. Right. So it's not about the launch. It's about what happens after the launch and having consistent, regular podcast content that serves an audience. That's more important than a big push for a big launch of a show. So I like to ease everybody in, make sure everything's running, make sure your podcast is live everywhere you want it to be. And when it's ready and you can listen to it on all the different apps or whatever you want to go with, then tell everybody. Because the worst thing you want to do is say, hey, everybody, I'm on Apple. Go listen to my show. And we go to Apple and you're not there because there's a delay. There's a delay from the time you launch to the time that Apple goes, oh, and they finally bring your stuff in. So you want to make sure you're everywhere, then tell the world where you are. Okay. That's going to help a lot.
That makes sense. Now, one of the reasons I was leaning toward the launch, I'm fully understand what you're saying about, launch not making the podcast. The sole reason that I was looking to launch hard was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this one too, because like I said, I'm just trying to get this. I'm grabbing pieces of information here and there. But with iTunes specifically, what I was told or read somewhere is that they have a section in their podcast directory for new and noteworthy. So if you're a podcaster and you launch, you get a whole bunch of people in there to rate your show and give it a review, that you can appear in Apple's, the iTunes new and noteworthy podcasts, and that gets a whole bunch more eyeballs on you. So it can, give you kind of a little bit of boost. I know it's not going to do anything for the long run, but it can help you get off the starting line. Now, is that a legitimate thought process in your eyes?
So it probably should be renamed new and or noteworthy, because you could be a podcaster and have a show for 10 years and then all of a sudden show up as noteworthy because of something you did in your show. So that's not necessarily the fact that you're new. There's an opportunity to be found anytime as noteworthy. Those two words aren't synonymous to themselves, where they're combined as one statement that you're new and noteworthy at the same time. Okay, they're separate. Okay. So it's and or noteworthy. Just kind of add the word or there. Okay.
So that makes a lot of sense. I didn't know that. This is good. So the noteworthy part, if you, say you did a soft launch, like you were talking about, make sure everything was good. All right. I've got 6 episodes out.
Good.
Now I rally the troops and have everybody go rate and write reviews. And, I get 100 people, just dig deep into my sphere of influence, get a whole bunch of people to rate and review it, plus put it out on my social media and all that kind of stuff. It could actually move into the noteworthy, even though it'd been out for a little bit. It's not technically new.
It takes a little of the stress off of your shoulders to do all that up front and try to hit a home run. Right. Think baseball. Okay. You're not going to step up to the plate in baseball, first pitch, hit a home run, and your career's over. That's not how it works. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff before you come to the plate for the first time.
Right.
And in podcasting, the same thing. There's a lot of work that happens to build a foundation before you become noteworthy.
Right.
Right. So this whole new and noteworthy and all the reviews and everything, reviews are great because it gives other people social proof. Think of buying a book on Amazon.
Right.
If you go to Amazon and you see great reviews and everyone's talking really highly of this book, you're more apt to buy the book. If I tell you to watch a show on Netflix that I really love and we have a friendship, you're most likely going to go and watch the show because we're friends. And you're like, well, if Dave liked it and we hang out, I'm probably going to like it. And I'm not going to recommend anything to you that I think you're not going to like because we're friends. So recommendations carry weight. So when people leave you reviews, that's amazing. But what I think what Apple really likes is when people come to your show and not just rate and review, but when they hit play and they listen to the entire thing. So if it's a 40-minute episode, they don't stop at minute 2 and leave. They stay to minute 40. And then Apple's like, oh, this is a good one. People are sticking around. Think of it from a point of view of Apple. If you were the CEO of Apple and you had a platform that had podcasting, you would want people to come to your platform and stay. If you come to my platform and leave in 10 seconds, there's something wrong with this person's podcast. So we're not going to promote it as much. We're going to push it down the list a little. But if you come to Steve's podcast and everyone we send there stays on my app when they could be watching Netflix, YouTube, watching television, whatever, but they come to Steve's podcast and they stay, that's when Apple goes, oh, this is a good one. It's the same as Google. If Google sends you to a website, YouTube, everything.
YouTube, the longer the watch time percentage-wise, the more they're going to push that video.
That's how you move up. That's how you move up. So it's not a guarantee that if you get ratings and reviews, that's going to make your podcast successful.
Okay.
Because, imagine, I don't know if you like cooking, but if you were a terrible cook and you made terrible food and it tasted horrible and you just asked all your friends to rate and review your food at your restaurant and everybody said, great food. But if I come there based on the results and the reviews and there's terrible, I'd be like, what is going on here? Right?
Yeah.
So the same thing for your content. You just want to create great content that when somebody says, I love Steve's podcast, and then I read that review, I come to your podcast, I'm like, yeah, you're right. Steve's podcast is amazing. I leave a review.
Okay.
And then I listen to the end of your show. That just reinforces that this is a good show. And that's what's going to catch Apple's attention more than 1,000 thumbs up, which you can buy, which is not good. You can buy those reviews.
Oh, okay.
And those aren't real people. That's not your audience. So that's a trap that people fall into, is that I have to be amazing on my first 6 episodes or I'm going to fail. That's not true. That's not true. Okay. So don't go down that path, because
that would be a lot of pressure because nobody's good on their first 6 episodes. I mean, I'd like to think that are pretty good, but there's a learning curve with everything.
Right. So. And so what happens if people aren't successful in 6 episodes, they quit. I didn't hit the charts, I'm done. But you have a great podcast and you're a great person, and what you've seen in the world, I can't do your show. It's impossible. I can't do your podcast.
Right.
I can't be you.
I can't do yours.
So, no.
We're all got our thing.
Everybody starts with 0 listens and 0 followers. Everybody. Okay. What happens from there is all up to you as a podcaster. How you build community, how you build your podcast, your content, how you show up in the world. That's you. It's all you.
Love it.
And that foundation is going to take time to build. Anything worthwhile takes time.
Yeah. That's when I started this, I know you can make money in podcasting. I know there's a lot of different ways you can monetize it. There's just a ton, but that wasn't the driving factor for me. And I've also been around on this earth long enough, and I've had failures, I've had successes, I've seen a lot. I know that it's going to take a long, you could have these flash in the pans, but generally speaking, you've got to put the work in before you're going to see any level of true success. So in my head, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a minimum of 200 episodes and not expect to see a dime out of it. Now, if I get to 200 and I haven't made a penny, I may need to reevaluate what I'm doing. Maybe this isn't my thing, but in my head, I'm looking much, much longer term with this.
Right. So there's a couple ways to consider as far as monetization. I know you're talking about going with Podbean for your hosting site.
Mm-hmm.
They have a monetization thing built into their podcast platform, which you can talk to them about. They can kind of direct you there. So you can get a sponsor who will give you money to talk about their product, and they'll pay you. And it's usually based on how many listeners you have. It's kind of like the radio model, commercials you hear on radio. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like buying a sign on a bus bench on the side of the road or a billboard.
Right. Yeah.
How do you even really know how many people saw the billboard? You drive by it every day. It's there. I never really
probably try and calculate the number of cars that pass each day. And
I've never pulled over on the side of the road and called the company that I saw the sign for. I've never done that. So how do you measure that success? I don't know. But in podcasting, we know who's listening, where they are. We know how long they listen to the show. We know if they listen to the commercial or not. We know more information than radio does because we have the real stats that come to us from around the world. So we have a better idea of who our audience is than a bus advertisement, a billboard, a radio station, because we have the real numbers that come back to us. Not
there's
some
a lot
estimated.
of
Right.
There's a lot of analytics available, isn't there, with the podcast?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, I'm excited to get into that part, into the marketing aspect of it. I just really enjoy it, and maybe for people, somebody who's thinking about starting a podcast, I'll kind of back up a little bit, because when I decided to do a podcast, I'd never listened to a podcast before in my life.
I love it.
Outside of Joe Rogan. I see the 5-minute Joe Rogan clips, but I mean, they're all over YouTube and everything. But, that's fascinating. He's got some good guests, and it's kind of entertaining for me. But outside of that, I had never listened to a single podcast in my entire life. So everybody, well, if you've never listened to podcasts, why did you start to become a podcaster? It's like, I had a credit repair business, and I was putting out videos on social media, shorts, TikToks, Facebook Reels, Instagram, all that. And I started getting a pretty decent, for me, it was a pretty decent size social media reach. I had maybe 20, 30,000 on each platform. Yeah. So not huge, certainly not an influencer of any kind, but I was getting out there a little bit. And I started getting invited to be on other people who had podcasts, because I was getting to be kind of a recognized expert in the field, and most of the time I can talk pretty clearly. So I figured, when I got invited to be on these podcasts, I always had a blast. I just had a fun, having a conversation like we're having a conversation. When you can have like a deep, meaningful conversation where you learn something, you meet somebody who's kind of maybe like-minded or different, you share some ideas. It's, I don't know, for me, that's very stimulating. So I looked at what I was doing. I've been in the credit biz for 7 years, and I would dread getting up in the morning. I was dreading getting on the phone. I was dreading doing sales. I was dreading doing cold calls. I was dreading doing follow-ups. I was dreading doing coaching calls. I was dreading doing credit reviews. It's just like, shit, man. It was like, and I'd be drained. At the end of the day, I'd just be drained. I was just like, ugh, whatever. And every time I do one of these podcasts, I'd come off and I'd just be like, I'm juiced up. It was fun. It was such a cool thing. So one of the guys, he's actually the guy who really kind of pushed me into podcasting. His name's Mo Del Busi. He's got a podcast called Habits of the Few. Really cool dude. He's up in Portland. We ended up becoming pretty good friends. And he invited me back about 9 months later to be on the podcast again. So yeah, Mo, he invited me back, right? We had another great conversation. We ended up, like I said, we ended up becoming friends. We're still friends to this day. And then, we get done with the call and we're just kind of chit-chatting after. And he's like, man, you really need to do a podcast. You really, you need to.
Yep. Yeah.
And I'm a little slow sometimes. So like my response to him was like, no way in hell. I've talked about credit all freaking day. The last thing I do want to do is to get on a podcast, talk about credit. And he's like, dumbass, you don't have to do a podcast about credit. You can do it about whatever you want. And I was, Oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm like I
Yeah.
said, I can be a little slow, a little hard-headed, but so I started thinking and about subjects and things that I would like to do. And I'm a big fan of personal development and mindset and I'm not a complete red pill guy, but like masculinity. I think young men these days need some guidance when it comes to that because the world's getting a little strange. I'm not going to get into all that, but
Yeah.
I think a lot of them are really looking for role models that they can look up to that are strong, strong masculine men,
Yeah.
and not like the crazy out there ones, but just the good role models. And I was like, I could probably put something together like that. I can talk
Yeah.
personal development, I can talk mindset, I can talk achieving goals, that kind of thing all day long. And so started kicking around. I was like, you know what, that's fun. And that's why I was like, I wasn't had that mindset where I absolutely have to get paid. I'm like, I'm already making money, so I don't need the podcast to pay me. I just have fun for it. So it's almost more of a passion thing. I
Yeah.
just enjoy it. Now, if it
Yeah.
makes me money and I can get it, well, more awesome. So, and it was something I could do on the road, traveling the world.
Yeah.
So I had to make
I love it.
some adjustments, of course. When you start researching, hey, what kind of equipment should I use? What kind of camera? What kind of microphone? All that. There's a lot of different recommendations, and a lot of them are, big bulky setups or kind of permanent. Like your microphone, great setup
Yeah.
with the boom arm and all that. I can't do that in a suitcase.
No, no. That's a $50 mic on Amazon, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
That's
Oh,
all that
okay.
is. And you have your mic, which is great. I love that it's still portable. Tell
Yeah,
tell well, tell everybody your mic too.
it is
It's a
a
Rode.
it's a Rode, so it's a good brand, but it's a Rode micro USB,
Good.
and
Beautiful.
it just the sound. Obviously, Rode is a good brand,
Oh yeah.
but
100%.
the sound seems to be great, and it's tiny. I can put it right
Yeah.
in my backpack. It takes up no room. It's not heavy. And I got I'm not using it right now because it doesn't cooperate with Zoom that well. But I got what's called an Elgato
Yeah.
Facecam
Yeah.
Pro.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, the thing is absolutely fantastic. It's like 4K, 8K, ultra high definition. But for some reason, it just doesn't like Zoom
Really?
for me. And I don't know why. And I'm not a real tech guy. It's probably some setting or
Yeah.
whatever. But I decided for mine, I decided to use Riverside
Good. That's a
to
good
do
one.
the recording. It seems to be pretty good so far. And the webcam gets along with that system.
There's a
So
lot of editing tools on Riverside as well that you can use after you're done recording to create your social media posts and all kinds of editing stuff. It's a really good platform for that. And they even allow you now to upload something you recorded somewhere else. You can bring it into Riverside. So you can record on Zoom and bring it to Riverside, upload it to Riverside, and now start editing there as well. So it becomes
yeah,
like an editing platform as well, which will save you a lot of money because that's an additional purchase that some people make on top of having Riverside. So you get
right.
everything in one. That's a good thing.
I've really enjoyed it. It's worked out really well for me. I don't think any platform is perfect, but I haven't had any problems with it.
Yeah.
I'm about 24 episodes deep. And one thing that I really like about that back end is, everything's moving so fast these days with the AI, but they've got the AI incorporated where it will analyze your entire podcast, knock out 10, 20 of the social media reels. It will trim them, edit them, put them together. It will caption them, and they're just downloaded and ready to go with a click of
It's
a button.
amazing. It's amazing, right?
It's insane what this thing can do these days.
And I heard people say that AI right now is the dumbest it will ever be. It's only going to get better. It's only going to
Yeah.
get better and better and better. So, I love it. So I want to
We're
go
in the
back
infancy.
I want to go back to your monetization thing for a second.
Okay.
With you and who you are, I see for you down the road using your podcast. You said 200 episodes. That's amazing. Most people can't see past episode 10. So I love that you have a plan. Use your
Long term.
podcast. Use your podcast if you want to go with guests or do solo host. It doesn't matter, or a combination of both. but use your podcast to start building your next book. I want you to write a book based on your podcast.
Okay.
The things that you talk to us on episode 1, 2, 20, 200, those are all content pieces. And those could be chapters in a book that you're writing. You bring on a guest, you bring on Mo, and you interview Mo, and you take that information and you translate it into a book, which then you become a published author. Now that you're a published author, you get on other shows to promote your book. That book becomes a course. That course becomes working with clients, and people listen to your show 200 episodes in. They're going to reach out to you, Steve, with a credit card in hand going, I've listened to 200 episodes of your show. I identify with you. I'm part of your community. I love what you do. You speak life into me every episode. Here's my credit card. When can we start working together? I want to sign up for your course. I want to be part of your program, your mastermind, whatever you have planned. You don't have to sell me. Don't sell me anything. I want to be with you. I want to work with you. Right. You're the only one for me. This is my credit card. When do we start? That is probably the best way to leverage your podcast to make money than to sell a mattress or a food supplement like everybody else does, because you're going to make pennies from that kind of sale. And it's not worth, you won't live off of that, to be quite honest. In the early days of your podcast, you won't be able to, it's not make a living money. But if you could take your podcast and get a $2,000 client from one episode, I can't imagine that matching anything else. And the other thing, what you can do in the meantime, while you're building that community and you're building all of that, is give your audience a way to give back to you. And probably the most simplest way that I've done it is there's a website called Buy Me a Coffee, buymeacoffee.com. And what you do for free, it's all free, you can get a link and people can donate to you in increments. I have it set up in $5 increments. People can donate to you $5. And they can give you, like I had one person last week gave me 12 coffees at $5 each. And that's money that comes straight to me. They take a small little percentage. I think I'm in Canadian funds. In a $5 donation, I get like $4.75.
So it's like a credit card transaction fee, essentially.
Yeah. And they can donate anytime they want. Instead of like a Patreon where you're asking them to sign up monthly, and you say, if you become my patron, I'll give you more content.
Right.
You're committing to do extra work at the beginning, and I think you need to focus on your podcast audience, not extra. Give them an opportunity to give you this. You get a clickable link from Buy Me a Coffee, put it in your email signature, put it on your website, and that's just a link that I can go and I'm like, episode 3, I love your show. I want to give you $5. And there's 10 more of us that want to give you $5. There's 100 of us that want to give you $5. And you just leave it out there. You just leave it out there. And anyone, anytime can click that link. I would put it in my show notes on every episode. Buy Me a Coffee link. So if I'm on your show and I'm listening to you and Mo, and I'm like, what a great episode. I want to give you something back. If you don't give me an opportunity to do that, I'm going to walk away. But if I see it right there on my phone that I can give you $5.
Just easy.
Right? Yeah. It's so simple. So for me, in 4 months, I've made $475 and I've never promoted it.
Wow.
I don't talk about it. It's just on my website.
Right.
It's like, if you found value in my show and something that we talked about gave you value, here's my link. I really appreciate the support.
Yeah.
That's all I say. Once in a while, I'll throw that into my content and then I just leave people alone. Because the last thing I want is 100 commercials in my podcast. That's what happened to radio. And that's why we all hate radio. It's like, can I just listen to something without you breaking away for a commercial? That's why we hate television. That's why we like Netflix, because there's no commercials in the middle of the show. We get to watch the entire episode and go to the next episode. Yeah. We're not going to see a commercial for a mattress. I don't need a mattress. This is, I'm going to go grab a snack because I don't want to watch this commercial.
Right.
So
I love
commercials commercials killed radio. And I think a lot of podcasters are embracing commercials to the point where I think it's going to damage their content in the long term, because a lot of people get annoyed by endless commercials for things that have nothing to do with the content. And it's just like, why am I listening to this? It doesn't match with what Steve is even talking about. I don't understand why we're doing this. So I personally, I don't subject my listeners to that. It's my personal choice, but I just tell my listeners, if you want to support me, here's a quick, easy way to do it. It's a low barrier to entry. You're not doing it every month. It's whenever you want, right? And if you don't want to, you don't have to. But here's a way to do that. So buymeacoffee.com, set it up. Okay. It's really simple. And then you can do that. Yeah, you'll have this episode. You can go back and hear it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a really simple way. So use that at the beginning, but then work your way towards building out your podcast as a way of maybe creating a book or a course or a downloadable thing that people can get from your website, that people can interact with you. And as you do that, the Buy Me a Coffee just sits there quietly collecting cash from people that want to give to you. And then we get to the point where you can actually have a program, a service, coaching, whatever. Yeah. You could bring people on like this as a coaching call, and you can work through whatever the topic of the day is. And you could do this like we're doing together, but except you're leading and you're coaching them on whatever the topic is. Right. And then what that says to your listeners is, I can hire Steve to be my coach.
Right.
And little subtle things that you say in your podcast, like, oh, okay. So everyone, I want to let you know, this week I was talking to one of my clients. Dave came to me and he had a great question about this. And this is what Dave and I talked about. So, if you ever have a question, let me know. And as a listener, what I just heard was Steve takes clients. Steve is a coach. You didn't say, hire me to be your coach. You said, I was working with a client and this is what your question was. So you just gave me the information that said, I could hire you without saying, hire me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I love that you're saying this. And the reason that I love it is because that's kind of the angle that I decided to take. I'm not 100% on the full-blown personal coaching. I think that might be something a little bit ways down there, but I've already kind of started to frame out the idea for a course or a book, or maybe a combination of the two.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, because it's kind of what I do already, because when I shut down the credit repair business, I want to travel the world and I don't want to be on the phone all day. So I was like, okay, but I still need to make money. Weird how life is like that. But what I decided to do is take the knowledge that I had about credit, personal credit and business credit. I created 2 courses so that people just go buy them online and do their thing. One is a personal credit. One is how to build business credit under an LLC. So it's, that has been, I still have to create videos and content to drive traffic to it, because paid traffic is a little tough, and I want to commit to that. Especially there's some niche products in some industries that, Facebook and Instagram just don't like. Credit's one of them. So I drive my traffic from YouTube channel and from TikTok and Facebook Reels and things like that. So my thought was, okay, once I get this, go through the learning curve of like, okay, I've got the equipment, got that down, got the mechanics down. Now let's talk about guests. Okay, let's get guests, work on interview style, kind of figure out where I wanted to be with that. Okay, now technicalities of hosting and all that. And then, okay, marketing. There's these phases that you go through when you're starting a podcast, as far as the learning curve. And I was like, okay, when I get done with that, then I'm going to turn my focus onto, okay, well, what kind of product can I put together that's mine, that is in alignment with the show itself. So it's kind of becomes its own thing. Because I'm with you. I don't like commercials. Maybe if I had a really good sponsor and they wanted to like run one commercial an episode, I'd be cool with that. But I'm not going to have commercial after commercial after commercial. There's just no way. I want people to be able to listen and not just be interrupted constantly. That's horrible.
Yeah. So like, for example, your microphone, you got that great Rode microphone. It's great. It's a nice microphone. You sound great. But if your audience are not people who would use a microphone, makes no sense to advertise that mic to your audience, because they don't buy mics. Right. None of them have a podcast. None of them are ever going to use a microphone. Right. So if your podcast is about personal growth and you're all about finding, having a great mentality and finding your purpose in life. To sell them a mic might be a hard sell. They'd be like, I don't even need a mic. Why are you talking to me about mics? Yeah. So for me, as a podcaster about podcasting, talking about my microphone is a obvious thing. It's like, what mic do you use, Dave? Can I buy the same mic as you? Well, here's my link.
Yep.
So that might be a good, so if you find something that suits your audience and you're passionate about it, you use it yourself. I trust you as the host that you would not endorse anything that you don't believe in. So if you have something that really goes really well with what you talk about, then don't be shy about talking about it. You can reach out to them and you might want to take a shot at it, because you don't have to have a certain number of listeners to get a sponsor.
Really?
Sometimes they just want the audience that you have.
Right.
So if you are a podcast about microphones and all you talk about is microphones every single episode, a microphone distribution company is going to look at you over somebody who's a health and wellness person.
Right. You may only have 2,000 listeners, but that's more valuable to get in front of those than 200,000 people who have no interest in microphones whatsoever.
Go back to the bus stop sign.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's just the shotgun approach. Hopefully you hit something.
Yeah. Because they're just banking on you having 100,000 listeners, and maybe a few percentages of that listening audience will actually buy the product. So they just shoot it out to the masses and hope they catch something, where you could have a narrow focused audience who are super engaged, trust you as a host. And if you promote it, I trust you. And you better have used it, and you better really believe in it, because if I listen to you and I buy it and it's crap, I'm going to tell you it's crap. Right. Yep. So a highly engaged audience is what sponsors are looking for. But I would again go back to the fact that if you just start out with a simple donation platform, buy me a coffee, and then work your way towards whatever you have as far as an offering, you're going to make more money because you're your own sponsor.
Right. Yeah. Right. Instead of taking a small affiliate fee off of selling somebody else's product, you get everything because you put your effort into creating it.
And then you can be the person that's highlighted on somebody else's podcast.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
People would be paying you.
Yeah.
So anyway.
That's a good thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this confirms that obviously I don't have the details. I have a general direction, but having this conversation with you is like just kind of reinforcing that, okay, I think I'm on the right path with this then.
So the other thing I would throw at you is you said you have 2 courses, basically course material from the credit stuff. That's just
they're up
there,
and running.
Right?
They're being sold.
Yeah.
No, they're out there being.
They're running. Okay. Yeah. But you could you turn that into a book?
I already wrote a book on credit. I just haven't published it.
Okay.
But it's one of those things. It's one of those things that I could publish that book, self-publish. I look into it. It's not that much, really out of pocket to get it out there. But once again, I'm just kind of burned out on the credit subject. I don't want to be going on other people's podcasts talking about credit, promoting my book. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to publish it. I'm going to focus on what I'm enjoying at the moment.
So maybe in the future, just as an idea, you have your own podcast coming up where maybe you do a small little mini series and you just touch on credit for a few episodes, maybe 2-3 episodes. You just talk credit. And then in those episodes, you promote the book or the course, and then you stop.
Yeah.
And you just leave that in the world, let it do its work for you in the behind the scenes, and continue on with the next topic. You can jump around and do little mini series within your content, and you're not stuck to one thing. That's a piece of you. You have knowledge and wisdom that I don't have. I can't find, and I would love to be able to have access to. Right. And what's common knowledge to you is completely, I have no idea what anything that you know. So I'm looking for that kind of information. I'm going to Google, I'm searching for it. That could bring people to your podcast for 2 or 3 episodes. They connect with you, they sign up for the course, they buy the book, whatever, and you move on to the next thing. You just have something small and honor the knowledge you have and give that to your community, right? That's an easy, that becomes another sellable item that just, again, works in the background. You move on. I know you don't want to talk about credit every day, but just give us a little bit and let it sell itself and move on to the next topic.
I like that because one of my products, I've got two products. I've got a personal credit repair and education system. And it's really, really good. It's top notch. I put everything that I had into that. But the same with the other product I have, which is a business credit. Now, I don't know exactly how things work in Canada. I know the Canadian credit system has some parallels to the U.S. credit system, but in the U.S., you can take a corporate entity like an LLC, S corp, C corp, something like that, with the EIN number, and you can build a fully independent, legally separate credit profile under that company that is separated from your personal credit. So, in the event something happens to that company and it goes bankrupt or something, you leave your personal credit kind of intact. It's that separation. That's where the value of that comes in. But I think a lot of my podcast people are going to be, kind of the rogue entrepreneurs, the ones that are looking to kind of carve their own path. It's, it's called the Ronin mindset. Do you know what you're familiar with Ronin?
Yes.
Samurai?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So they're masterless samurai who, got their own path. So I'm putting that combined with the 8 principles of Bushido that guided the samurai's everyday life and using that as a framework for the course. But I think that a lot of it will be people who are either looking to start a business or in business or solopreneurs or whatever. So that business credit product may actually be something that's in line with a more large majority of the listening base. It could be. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how that plays out, but that might be something that I can run commercials on my own show.
That's it. Yeah. You can put a commercial at the beginning of the show, the middle of the show, or the end of the show.
Right.
Most sponsors are going to want to be in the middle of the podcast.
Right.
Because the beginning is easy to skip and the end, people just stop listening. So the middle is where most people want to be. So if you had a mattress sponsor, they're going to want to be in the middle. And they're going to want you to talk about it instead of having a plugged-in ad. They're going to want you speaking about the mattress. So I'd rather hear you break away from the interview with Dave and talk about your book or talk about your course and then come back to me than throw the ad at either end. So that can be kind of blended into the conversation.
Right.
Right. So
instead of being like a commercial spot, it can just be kind of part of the organic flow of the conversation.
Yeah. And then that lives in the world forever. Right. As content. So your commercial becomes content, not a distraction.
Right. That sounds like I like that idea.
So think of a movie and you see the Coke can sitting on the counter and your character grabs the Coke and has a drink and sets it down, continues the movie.
Yeah.
That's a Coke commercial.
Oh yeah. They paid big for that product placement.
Built into the movie, right? It's just right there, right? So we do that in our podcast. We just kind of add it to what we're talking about and we keep moving on.
Right.
And it just becomes baked into the conversation. So
is that what the Coca-Cola cooler in the background is?
There you go, right? There you go.
Made by Coke?
No, I have no.
Coca-Cola, if you're listening.
Come on, man.
This man.
Yeah, come on. So that's kind of an idea. Is just kind of bake it in there. And, so when you talk about monetization and the natural people gravitate towards trying to sell somebody else's stuff. I don't think you need to do that because you have something worth buying. You put a lot of time and effort into this, and to shelve it, even if it doesn't match with your content perfectly, I think you're maybe missing an opportunity to have money coming to you in the early days of your podcast as you grow. And eventually, if it doesn't serve you after episode 200, you can just stop talking about it. Right? Because if I fall in love with your podcast, Steve, I'm going to go back to episode 1. Even if you're on episode 200, I don't care. I love your show. And I'm going to hear that ad that you talked about 200 episodes ago. And I'm going to go find out how I can sign up for your course or download your 10 tips for better credit. I'm going to go find it because I like you and I like what you're talking about. And eventually I'm going to catch up to 200, but I'm going to go back to the beginning. And some people will do that. So if you build it into your podcast from the beginning and then just put like a boat and just push it out into the water and move on to the next thing, somebody's going to find it. It's going to show up on somebody's shore somewhere. And somebody's like, hey, look at this great content from Steve. right? And then you just let
It's
it work for
evergreen. It
you.
never goes away.
Just let it work for you and avoid the trap of falling into promoting somebody else's stuff. You have too much to offer to give that valuable space up to somebody else that doesn't add value to you or your audience. So keep that in mind, because I think you got something special.
I think so. I think advertising my own, like you just talked about, kind of within the flow of the show. Either way, I'm building my personal brand. If they Google me, they'll find the credit products too.
Yeah.
So it's just it's getting out there, Like you said, push that boat out there and let it go. See where it ends up.
Imagine bringing on a Canadian expert in your field and have a conversation and compare the U.S. to Canada and get their feedback, because you just said, I don't know what happens in Canada. Have a Canadian expert who has the same passion that you have them on and do a comparison of the U.S. to Canada or the U.K. and America, and compare the two. And then that just gives you the chance to talk about your program by having this person on and getting new perspective, and you learning, hey, in Canada, we're exactly the same. Oh, you know what? I can now market to Canada. My program works in Canada because I had the guest on who reinforced everything I've said.
Right.
So now I know my audience is bigger than the U.S.
Right.
So
I did, out of the 24 episodes that I do have recorded, I had one guy on who is a credit expert, like me, kind of in the same field. Only the reason I had him on specifically was not necessarily to talk about credit, but I had met this guy. He's on TikTok, and he's not the biggest credit repair guy on TikTok, but he's close. He's like 500,000 followers. He's big.
Yeah.
And he has 100,000 here, there. He's got a ton of followers. So when early in my social media days in the credit, we had kind of interacted a little bit, and he was always super supportive for, no reason. So he's just one of those guys that doesn't come from a point of scarcity, his abundance. I'm new on TikTok. He's like, hey, good job. Nice content. I'm like, oh shit. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you.
But that guy is a beast. So basically I wanted to have him on there and talk about, how he became so successful in the credit niche on social media, and, kind of I wanted to dig into his mindset and how he got going. And we had a fascinating conversation because I'd been in the business for 7 years. I was making decent money, but by decent money, we're talking a couple 100,000, you know what I mean? This guy he had been in business 3 years. And I think between him and his partner, I think in the first year, they made 1.5 million. Huge money. But he killed it on TikTok. He was a fairly early adapter of TikTok, but he put in the work. Most people, I was struggling to do one good day, 7 days a week consistently on TikTok. He was doing 8 to 10 a day, 7 days a week.
Wow.
And going live for a full hour, 5 days a week. Wow. I mean, the guy's a beast. But it paid off. He's got more business. He knows what to do. Him and his wife didn't know what to do with the money. They went out and bought a building so that they could have room to hire people. So, but I was like, man, that's just fascinating because, it's like a lot of things, and myself included. Like, oh man, I gotta make a TikTok video. He's doing 10 a day. He's doing like 60, 70 a week. Yeah, I was like, oh, maybe I'm just lazy. I don't know. Well,
that consistency works so well because you become part of their habit. Right? Yeah, we all have our habits, and when you latch on to something that gives you value, you make priority in your day. So when you're doing that much content, you become like the first thing you see when you pull your phone out. You're just naturally going to go there. So
he's a monster. Okay, let me ask you this. My plan, like I said, I was very worried in the beginning. And I think this is one of my main concerns when I first started. And I think maybe a lot of people listening might be one of their concerns too. It's like, how am I going to find guests? Am I going to be able to get people on my show? And it turns out that's one of the easiest things. really? You know,
Yep.
so I ended up with 24 episodes recorded. And I was like, because consistency is important in the podcast game too. It's like almost the number one thing. So I was like, okay, I got to make sure that I have some in queue so that no matter where I'm at in the world, if I run into a place where I don't have the right Wi-Fi or internet or something, that I can keep that consistent schedule of releasing my podcast. So I started interviewing people. And it turns out you can find a lot of people to interview. And so I was like, okay, well, I could probably do 2 a week. So my thought was, I'm gonna get these ones that I have recorded out as fast as possible, and I'm gonna keep doing more interviews. But I'm gonna release 2 a week. But once I kind of get that down to a manageable, keep 5 or 6 in the queue and releasing, my thought was one interview style one released once a week, and then one solo style where I'm talking about a specific aspect of mindset, especially in the terms of way I'm framing it. I'm going to be framing it for the course, with the 8 principles of Bushido: respect, honor, loyalty, self-discipline, all these things. And so what are your thoughts? I mean, you've been doing this a long time. What are your thoughts on that kind of a releasing schedule? Like the interview once per week on a certain day, and then a solo one once per week on a certain day, like Monday, Thursday, or whatever the schedule is.
Beautiful idea. Because when you're hosting as a host and you have a guest, your guest is the main focus. You're not going to talk as much because the idea is to feature the guest. Right. And then when you do the solo hosted, it's all about you and your knowledge, your connection with the audience. And I think if you do one over the other, your audience doesn't get a good chance to hear both. So if having guests on, it's a different voice, a different perspective. You're asking questions, you're learning. I'm learning, listening to you. So it's a chance for other people to connect with your guests. And I trust you as a host that you're only going to bring guests on that bring value to your podcast and to me as a listener. So I already have a built-in trust with you that you're not going to waste my time with somebody who has nothing to do with your content. And it's just some random person you found somewhere and you're going to interview them about something as irrelevant.
Right.
I have trust in you as a host that you're not going to waste my time because time is precious. So I love that you bring on people that are going to support the theme of your podcast and support what you're doing. That's great. But I love connecting with you one-on-one because the listening habits of a podcast listener, I have you in my ears. Like I'm doing something else. Maybe I'm on the train, I'm going somewhere, I'm at work, I'm walking my dog, but it's you and me. So you're talking directly to me as a listener, not a massive audience. It's a one-on-one conversation. So I love the fact that I'm with you in that moment. So I love your idea of balancing them out. And your solo episodes don't have to be some magic number. You can do a 5-minute episode. You could do a recap of the interview that was my next question. Right? Just say, okay, so I had Steve on my podcast this week. It was episode 150. Guys, when I listened back to that episode and my conversation with Steve, what I love was his passion for people. I really loved how he talked about this. And if you haven't heard that episode yet, make sure you go back and listen. But the key takeaways that I took out was that he covered these 8 principles. And how I'm applying them myself is I'm going to focus on number 1. I'm going to focus on this part. And I'd love to hear how you're focusing on what Steve shared on the podcast. Reach out to me and let me know what you're working on and what resonated with you. Okay. Because now you're talking to me. Because when I'm listening as a listener, when you have an interview, I feel like I'm eavesdropping on your conversation. Yeah. Right? I'm on the outside. It's you and the guest. Right. So what I always ask my guests to do is I'm like, hey, while we're recording, I'm going to throw you a softball question. Really simple, right across the plate. And instead of talking to me, I want you to talk to my listener. I'm not here. I've left. It's your podcast as the guest, and it's my listener sitting here. What do you want to say to my listener? Don't talk through me. Talk to them directly. And then I do that. I'll throw you a question, and then I'm going to get out of the way. So I'm going to do it right now. Steve, what is one of the things that we struggle with we all struggle with mindset issues and trying to find our place. What would you say to a listener that is struggling getting in the right mindset to do something great this week, something they've never done, but they just feel intimidated? How do I change my mindset? Can you tell them how we can do that? Go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that we do, most people suffer from like confidence issues in that situation that you just explained to me. Most people suffer from confidence issues. One of the quickest ways to build confidence is to get small wins, stacked wins. And it doesn't have to be monumental things. It can be anything from getting up in the morning when you said you were going to get up without hitting the snooze button. Okay, that's a win. Making your bed. Okay, you accomplished something. That's a win. And if you start stacking these little wins every single day, that has a cumulative effect in your psyche. And it's going to build your confidence, because it also builds that integrity with yourself. If you say you're going to do something, do it. And that's super important, because so many people always live this in their head where, you see it with New Year's resolutions all the time. Of course, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to go to the gym. And they do it for a week or two, but they don't stick to it. If you don't stick to something for yourself, how would you think you're going to stick to your commitments to other people? And if you keep letting yourself down, how are you going to have confidence in yourself to do the bigger things? I want to start that podcast. I'm going to do it. Okay. Start with the little things. Get out of bed when you say you're going to get out of bed. Go to the gym. If you don't feel like going to the gym, go to the gym. Whatever it is that you know you need to do, whatever it is that you tell yourself you're going to do, make sure you do it. It's so important.
Okay, so right there, I asked you a question. You gave us some great content. On my solo episode, next episode, I'm going to say, hey guys, Steve was on. He talked about stacking wins. I want to know, what wins have you stacked this week after listening to that episode? And if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to Steve, because that was gold. But I want to know, reach out to me through an email. I have SpeakPipe on my website where you can leave me a voice message. I want to hear from you, from Steve's interview. What wins have you stacked this week that you never thought you could do? Reach out, let me know, and I want to bring your information, your answer into my next episode. Leave me a message. I'd love to hear from you. As a listener, I just heard the message, stack my wins. Dave reinforced it on a solo episode. I'm going to reach out to Dave and say, Dave, Steve's episode was great. I love listening to him. My 3 wins this week was I'm going to eat better, I'm going to get better, more sleep, and I'm going to go for a walk. I haven't done that for a long time. Those are my 3 wins I'm stacking this week. Thanks for that podcast.
Yeah.
See? So your idea of having an interview and then a solo hosted episode, go back and talk about what just happened. Because again, I might join you for the first time I ever hear your voice is your solo episode. I didn't hear the episode before. I don't have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
So I've joined you in progress. And I'm starting here with your solo. I want to go back. So you're like, pause this episode. Go back and listen to the one before and then come back. Go listen to Steve. Right. Go listen to that episode. And then join me here again and let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And then give them your own action item. Right? What do you want to tell me from your perspective? Right. It's your chance to talk to me. And then next week we have another guest. And then we have another solo. And then we have another guest, another solo. And by doing that, you don't have to come up with new content every time you come to the mic on your own, because you're just going to talk about what just happened.
Right.
Right? You're going to point them back to the episode that happened, and you're going to talk about your opinion, your view on what was discussed.
Yeah.
That's not new content.
Yeah, that's just automatic content idea. That's one of the things that I have difficulty with, and I'm sure a lot of people do, is like, especially when you're doing solo stuff, it's like, all right, what am I going to talk about?
Yeah.
So that's a really good idea. And you're also encouraging interaction with your viewers, which also can give you more content, because people are going to make comments or ask questions that you can also address in a solo podcast as well.
So we did this today. Exactly what I'm asking you to do on your show. You did it for me.
Yeah.
You talked about stacking wins. I got out of the way and you're the expert. Right?
Yeah.
So myself and the listener, we were listening to you. So it's a kind of you're talking to us. And then the next episode, when it's me by myself, it's you as a listener and me as a host talking together. So I reinforce the bond that we have. And then next week, in the next episode, I go to my guest. And then I reinforce our relationship with a solo episode, and then we go to a guest.
Right.
There's variety there that makes me want to come back. Yeah. And you might find that your listenership, when you look at your stats, you might find that you're getting more engagement when it's just you and your audience on a solo episode and less engagement on your interviews, or vice versa.
Right.
And then it tells you, okay, over time, I'm noticing that more people come to my solo episodes than my interviews. Maybe I need to do 2 solo episodes and 1 interview, or I need to do more interviews and less solo.
Right.
Because you're going to see the engagement stats where people come and where they land and where they stay. So then you can kind of adjust and tweak and then ask your audience, what are you enjoying more? Do you like the solo? Do you like more guests? Yeah. Reach out. Let me know at my website. And I'd like to hear from you. And then your audience starts saying, Steve, give me more of this. I need more of you. I want to hear more of your story. Okay, then maybe either you go to 3 episodes a week or you do 2 solo, 1 interview. Whatever. Yeah. Your audience will start telling you.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, because I remember we had that little conversation prior to doing this. You're doing what, 7 episodes a week total?
7 podcasts.
7 podcasts. And how many episodes per week? So 7 episodes? Or?
Two of them have 3 each a week. So that's 6 for 2 podcasts. And I have 5 more after
So 11 episodes a week.
Roughly, yeah.
You're a beast, man. I was like, man, 2's a commitment. Wow. And then I meet somebody who's doing 11.
And then I do all the editing. I do all the interviewing. I do all the scheduling. I do my websites. I do all my social media. I do all my artwork that goes with every episode. I'm a team of 1. And
you have a job.
And I work full time. And I work full time nights.
And you're
so
married.
I work tonight. Yeah. And I'm married still. Thank you. Yeah. Through all of this.
You're an animal, man.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I would not tell anybody to duplicate this by any means. But for me, podcasting is just a great way to, like, how would you and I have ever met?
We wouldn't have.
No, impossible.
Ever.
My life is different because of meeting you.
Same, yeah.
Okay, so like even just in our conversation today, I've learned so much that I can apply to my life just listening to you. So I can't wait for your podcast.
Jeez.
Come on. I can't wait for your podcast to be live so that I can promote it and I can tell everybody to come to you. And by being on this show, you're now in front of, I have 85,000 listens. So you're in front of an audience that would probably never have heard of you otherwise. Yeah. And I want to send that whole family of listeners from this show to you. I want people to come and support you in your launch of your podcast. So,
well, I'll definitely let you know, because
there you go.
I it sounds kind of like a broken record, but I am loving this whole thing so much.
Yeah.
The whole, I love doing the interviews. I like getting invited to be on other people's podcasts. It's fun having these conversations. Like you said, I'm learning, and I'm going to learn more in the coming minutes about podcasts because I got a bunch of questions still.
Okay. Let's go.
Okay. So let's do rapid fire questions. Artwork for the podcast. When I've got a logo, I had a logo made, but I've also jumped on like Spotify and iTunes. And I see people that sometimes they have different little square artwork next to each episode. Sometimes it's always the same. What do you recommend?
For ease of use, go with just the logo. That's the easiest way to start. I like having different. You can have your picture on there. For me, all my podcasts don't have my image on it because it's really not about me. That's kind of my personal opinion. If you're a brand, if you're Joe Rogan, you're going to want to have Joe Rogan on your picture, or something around that. So it's up to you, whatever serves you. The episode art doesn't play, the episode art for each individual episode doesn't show on every platform. Apple is just going to start doing that by the end of the year. They've never done it. They've only had one image for everything. So
Okay.
if you want to do it, you get ahead of the game. Apple's going to be doing it, so it's a good thing to do. But make
Do you want to
sure
put
that,
a picture of the guest on the episode?
or the topic, or something, but make sure that your logo is still there. Because then when I go through my phone and I scroll through all these episodes, I want to have something that identifies that episode to you. Because if it's totally different and there's nothing about your show on it, I don't know what that is.
Right.
Because some of your listeners are going to follow you and subscribe to your podcast, meaning every episode gets downloaded directly to their phone. So I have a whole list in a folder of all these episodes I've subscribed to, and I'm going through them going, who is this guy? I don't know. Delete. Because I don't recognize the podcast.
Okay,
so
you want
what
that,
I like,
that branding and that recognition throughout.
yeah.
Okay.
So if you're going to go with separate episode art, have something in there that identifies you and your show as you change the image. Or if that's too much work, go with one image for everything so that I know when I scroll through, I see how to podcast. Click. It's Dave. I know that's Dave because I know it's black and yellow. That's easy for me. I just know that's Dave's podcast.
Okay.
If that's easier for you in the beginning, do that. You can always go back and change it in the future. If you want to go episode art, no problem. You just reload the image. It's done.
Oh, okay. So it's not, okay. It's there and it's done. Okay. That makes sense. What's the difference between downloads and listeners?
Again, to my point where I download people's podcasts to my phone directly, a download doesn't technically mean a listen.
Okay.
So I have right now 40 episodes to listen to in my podcast download folder that I've subscribed to. These are shows that I like. So I've said, please send me every episode you can create.
Right.
I don't have time to listen to 40 episodes.
Right.
With 7 shows. I don't have time to listen to all these. So I cherry pick through my list of downloads, and some of them I delete, sadly, which means I never listen to that episode. It counts for you that I downloaded your episode. That counts on your stats that some guy in Canada downloaded your episode, but I didn't hear it.
And they can tell that too. They can tell if it's just downloaded or listened to. So
in some of the platforms,
you have all these metrics.
Yeah. So when you look at your stats,
I hear different terms all the time. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I had this many downloads a week, or I have this many listeners. I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
I told you I know next to nothing.
Yeah. So when you're talking to your audience, don't assume that they've actually heard your episode, even if they've downloaded it, because they might have deleted it. They might not have recognized the artwork or something, and they don't know what you talked about.
Okay.
So always send people back to the episode. In episode 200, we talked about this. If you haven't heard that episode yet, oh yeah, that's the one I downloaded and I deleted. Oh, I should go listen to that. Remind them, this is what we talked about, and this is why you should listen. This is why you should care. A listen is just me on my phone hitting play. Doesn't mean I've subscribed to your channel or followed you or anything. I just found you and I hit play. And I've listened for a period of time. And a listen counts for a certain percentage of the time I listen. So it can vary, but it's roughly less than 5 minutes, 2 minutes, counts as a listen. You have an hour show. I only listened to a minute of it. You get the credit from me listening, but I didn't hear anything you said because I stopped listening. So is that really a metric? Not really, because I didn't hear any of your content. I have no idea what you talked about, but you got to listen. Congratulations.
You got kind of a big pictures. Then you've got downloads, you've got subscribers, you've got listens. So
follows, they call it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. So you kind of have to not just look at one isolated one. I'll go a bunch of listens because maybe they listen to a little bit, maybe listen to a lot. But you can dig deeper and kind of find out what your average listen time is, I would imagine, too.
And, okay, so say you have a 30-minute episode and everybody stops at minute 15 for some reason. That would make you go, what happened at minute 15 where everybody just left?
Yeah.
Why did they not listen for the whole 30 minutes? So I'll go listen to my episode and I'm talking about mindset. And all of a sudden at minute 15, I talk about Mr. Snuggles, my cat. And oh, silly little Mr. Snuggles, he knocked over a plant today. Now back to my mindset talk. Everybody listening to your mindset talk is like, why are you talking about a cat?
Drop-off.
Why are you talking about cat? I'm out of here. So maybe stop talking about Mr. Snuggles. Your audience doesn't care about Mr. Snuggles. Just stay
That's
on the
very
topic.
similar on YouTube. You can see where people drop. So I'm very familiar with YouTube analytics.
Perfect. Yep. So maybe
So
if at the 15-minute mark everybody leaves, maybe make 2 15-minute episodes instead of one 30-minute episode. Everybody will stay to the end then.
okay. Now, can you go
Maybe.
back and re-edit these? Like, oh, say this situation, you got Mr. Snuggles. I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna
Cut
chop
that
out
out.
Mr. Snuggles and see if people
Yep.
keep going.
So on all
Okay.
your hosting sites, they'll have a button that says replace audio. And so everything is there. The structure is there, the listeners, the information, the name of your podcast, all of that stuff is still there. You're just going to take out the old audio and replace it with a new instead of uploading a new one, because that starts with 0 listens. And that can be annoying to
Does
your
that
audience because
go
I've already heard that. Right. So you're just
right?
going to
Does that go
replace
with
the
video
audio
as well?
Yeah, you can just replace both. Yep. So you get you get the same content. So I know I listened to episode 30 when you went in and tweaked it and replaced the audio. I'm not going to get a message to go back and listen to 30 again because I'm on episode 200. So for my How to Podcast series, my episode 0, which is like my, hi, I'm Dave, here's my podcast. I'm different now than I was then. So I just went back and tweaked it, uploaded it again for the new listener who finds me today, because I'm a different person than I was back then. But I want you to connect with me now. So I just replaced it. All my other listeners, they have no idea I did that. They don't care. They listened to it a long time ago. They're down the road. So I just replaced it, reloaded it, done. And now anybody who finds me today goes back to my 0 episode, my very first one. They're going to hear the same Dave they hear today. And that's just a simple replacement.
So is that episode 0? Is that considered your trailer?
Yeah.
Or is that different from a trailer?
Yeah. So what's the podcast? Why should I care about the show? What am I going to get out of it as a listener? More than really who you are. It's why do I care about this podcast? Because I can listen to 4 million podcasts. Why should I care about yours? Here's my commitment to you as a listener. Here's what I want to serve you with. And here's why I'm showing up for you. You can talk about some of the other stuff in the episodes and sprinkle you throughout the podcast episodes.
Yeah.
But why should this podcast matter to me as a listener? And what's your commitment to me?
So I need to get that recorded before I'm thinking about launching.
Yep.
How long, I mean, I realize there's probably no concrete thing, but generally speaking, how long would you recommend that episode 0 or that trailer, that first intro be?
Long enough to get your message out. Nothing longer. Just tell me what I need to know. You can do like a couple minutes. I wouldn't go like half an hour because, again, I've never heard of you before. I don't know who you are. So to commit to a 30-minute episode for the stranger, it's kind of like saying, hi, I'd like to go on a date with you. Do you want to marry me? It's like, wait a minute. I just met you. I don't know how to marry you. I don't even know if I like you. So podcasting wise, same thing. Hi, this is Steve. This is my podcast. This is what it's all about. My commitment to you is this. And this is why I care about you as a listener and why I'm showing up for you. That's it.
Sounds like 3 to 5 minutes-ish is probably going to be a little bit about me.
It's plenty.
So the podcast is what you're going to get out of it.
Done.
Okay.
And then if that changes in the future, go back and re-record it, re-upload it, move on.
Beautiful.
You can change that anytime.
Okay. See, that was another thing that was kind of, I don't want to say I was stressed about it, but I was like, fuck, because I've seen how much I've changed just over the course of recording, a little over 20 episodes in terms of, I want this direction. I want to forge these conversations more like this. I want to get this, so I've watched myself change and the direction I want to take my show change before I've even launched. So I'm like, that was tough for me to commit to something that's just going to be there solid. That could be completely different 6 months from now. So
right. You can do whatever you want. Yeah. You have complete control over this.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I should probably get Podbean and start playing around with that ASAP.
Yeah. And you'll have great, you can always go on YouTube University, type in any question you have, right? You can type in, show me how to use Podbean, teach me all the things about Podbean, and just go through YouTube and you'll learn. There'll be somebody out there who can teach you whatever you need to know. So
speaking of YouTube, Do you recommend posting the video to a YouTube channel as well, the full podcast?
So you have many options here. YouTube, you're going to want to have a playlist for your podcast where all your
Okay.
episodes are going to go.
Hmm.
And then on YouTube, you want to take that playlist and you can convert it into a podcast within the confines of YouTube. So it becomes a podcast. It's not going to be available. If people do this only on YouTube, it will mean it's not available on Apple because Apple and YouTube don't talk to each other. So it'll be within the confines of YouTube, but on the YouTube Music app, they now have a tab for podcasts. So people can listen to your podcast or watch your podcast. There's a little toggle switch at the top of the screen on your phone. If I want to watch the video or if I want to just listen, YouTube will then take your video and turn it into an audio-only experience with just an image so that people who don't want to watch the video or they're driving or their bandwidth is too high, they can just listen. And on the YouTube podcast app then, within YouTube Music, people can then interact with your podcast there. So you want to take that podcast playlist, and I actually have an episode on how to do this with screen share and everything. Watch me do it. But you can actually take that playlist, rebrand it as a podcast, and now you have a podcast on YouTube. And you just upload just like you would normally. And how you know when you like a video, you want to watch it later, you add it to your watch later folder. You're doing the same thing to your podcast. You're putting it into a folder that was a playlist, but is now branded a podcast. And then that goes
So it'll still show up on my channel.
Yep.
But it will also be in the
on YouTube Music. Good. Yeah.
Because what I was going to do, I had a couple of YouTube channels back in like 2013, and I didn't even know what I had. I got them both monetized. I didn't even know what I was like doing. I didn't realize you could make good money from YouTube. I was making a couple $100 a month, and I was like, whatever. And I didn't continue with them, but they're still there. So the one that I have, the personal one, I still have like 3,000 subscribers. So my plan was to start posting the episodes on that channel. So that's good. It'll still show up to those subscribers, but I can also put it in the podcast list. So that's cool.
So that's another great way to reach an audience. So if you only do YouTube, people on an audio only experience won't be able to connect with you. They won't know about your show. So you want to be where the audio only is, even though it's a video podcast. As many places as
possible.
Yeah, because again, like people listening to us right now are listening to us in the Philippines. They're listening to us in India, Africa, Iceland, New Zealand, Mexico, Canada. Everywhere. As people are listening to the show. And some of those people don't have access to YouTube due to data limits or bandwidth or whatever. So if you're only on YouTube and you're only video, you've just narrowed your audience a little bit to your reach. Yeah. So you want to be everywhere. Podbean will definitely help you get that all set up as well.
Yeah, because Podbean has an RSS feed that just released, and it won't go straight to YouTube. You got to manually do that, but it looks like it puts it out to pretty much all the major ones and a bunch of minor ones as well.
There's talk of YouTube eventually accepting your RSS feed from Podbean directly to YouTube, and then you won't have to do any of these steps. That's coming in the future. So, but right now, you have to do both. You have to do both.
Okay. All right. I'm excited. Okay. I'm gonna launch soon then. I'm just gonna get them out there, and then I'll do like you said, soft opening, get some stuff out there. The quicker I get it out there, the better off I'm gonna be. So I might go this. Oh, my thought on the launch, whether it was launch or now that we've talked kind of about the soft opening, is release 5 episodes at once. That way, if somebody finds it and they like it, there's other stuff for them to listen to.
Just like Netflix.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that also, what it does too for Apple and all those places you want to be found is people come to episode 1 and they stay and listen to 5 episodes. Apple goes, it's a good podcast. Right? Compared to having 1 episode. People come for 1 episode and then you don't make another episode for 2 months. Apple's like, well, that was kind of a waste. Right? We sent everybody here to this 1 episode. Everybody loved it, but then the host never showed up again. Right. So having 5 episodes give a chance for people to binge it, fall in love with your content. And if you want to be found on Google, use really good titles for your episode titles. Okay. So what would somebody search on Google around the topic of the conversation that you're putting in your episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What would people type into Google, and make sure those words are in the title of your show, of that episode.
Fortunately, I know how to do keyword research.
Good.
So
to do that,
that'll. I was going to ask you about that, but yeah, that's it makes it a lot more search engine friendly, and able for people to find.
So the name of your show is important. So if I have the Dave Show, no one's searching for the Dave Show forever. I'm not Joe Rogan. Nobody cares about me. So the Dave Show means nothing. So if I have the Dave Show, and I love the name called the Dave Show, I'm also going to put in, it's the Dave Show. It's a show about podcasting and helping podcasters grow. All of that other stuff after the Dave Show is what somebody would search. How do I grow my podcast? How do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? Those are the way we go to Google. You want that kind of content in the name of your show. Some kind of keyword that makes people go, that's the show for me. So if mindset is part of your content, you need the word mindset or something like that in the name of your podcast. Okay.
Name of the podcast is The Ronin Mindset. So
yeah, perfect. Awesome. Yep. So that's perfect.
I'm probably put it with Steve Didier to kind of keep building my personal brand, but
perfect. And then your first 8 episodes, go through those 8 things that you talked about that are part of that, so that becomes kind of your content piece that brings people and sets the foundation for what you talk about, because all those are separate episodes that you could talk about all those different disciplines.
I could make those my first 8 solo episodes could just be those 8 principles of Bushido.
And talk about why they mean something to you as a host, why they mean something to me as a listener. And that is the foundation for your interviews, your solo hosted. Everything builds off that first 8. And if somebody comes to your episode 70 and you say, hi, this is your first time here, thank you. But if you haven't heard the first 8 episodes of this podcast, stop right now. Go back to the beginning of the podcast and listen to that, because that's the foundation of everything we talk about on the show. And you'll drive people back to the beginning of your podcast, and then they'll listen to all 70 episodes to get caught back up to where they are now. Send them back. Evergreen content.
So you think that those 8 solos should be the first 8, or should I stagger them with the guest interviews that I have? That doesn't really matter as long as you get them out there.
Yeah, get them out there.
Okay. So maybe I'll just do odd even, make sure it's always guest interview, solo interview. So I might start with episode 0, just being me, obviously. Next one, guest, then me, then guest, then me, then guest.
And on most hosting sites, they'll let you take that episode 0 and make it a trailer, which then puts it at the top of your podcast. So if you're on episode 200, the trailer still shows at the top of the list and stays at the top, like it's pinned, so that people will see the trailer all the time. So even if I find you today and you have 200 episodes, I can still click the trailer. It's not buried back in the past. It's always there. Perfect. So that's why I say, if you're going to do like a short-term conversation around mindset and money, and you want to promote your course for 3 episodes, go up and change your trailer and say, hi guys, this is Steve. We're going to do a short little series on mindset and money. And I just wanted to let you know that we're just doing a short little series on this. And then we're going back to our regular content. Do the 3 series, the 3 shows, whatever, 5 shows, and then go back, change the trailer back to your normal one and continue from there. And that's your content to promote your program. And just do that.
Okay.
See? So you can use that trailer for your advantage. It doesn't have to be one time and you never touch it again. You can change it as often as you want. Just replace the audio and make sure it's tagged as a trailer, and everybody's going to hear that first. That's the first message I'm going to hear from you if I click that trailer. So you can use it as often as you want.
Okay. Yeah, this is giving me a bunch of ideas.
I like watching your wheels spin there. I love it.
Is it that obvious?
Yeah, it is obvious. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Oh. Now, see, now it is, let me see. I don't even know what time it is here. It's a little after 1 a.m, and now I'm like, probably going to start recording trailers.
So, okay. So
I always get just juiced up out of this.
I know, see? So if you want to come back and have a conversation as a recording or just the 2 of us together, I am completely open to do that, because I'm sure there's more questions now maybe than answers sometimes, please reach out to me anytime. Put some time in my calendar, and I'd love to do that. Okay.
You know what and this is, your listener base for me, but if I was a listener to the show and I was listening to us have this conversation, I would kind of want to know what happened. So maybe a couple months down the road, we could revisit this conversation and look at what we did tonight and be like, okay, so what did you do? What happened? What were the stumbling blocks? How did it turn out? How'd you fix it? I think that would be interesting for me. I mean, obviously up to you. You're the host, and it's your.
Oh no, I want you back,
listeners.
For sure.
But I think that would be kind of like almost like a follow up. Like, okay, this guy hasn't launched anything yet. Let's check in and
let's get you back. And again, when the podcast's ready, I want a commercial for your podcast. Record what you would hear on a radio ad, but for your show that I could put on my shows. I have 7 podcasts. I have over 1,000 episodes. I can then put your commercial for your show on my shows and send people to you, because I'd rather promote you than a mattress. So record that for me as well. Record that for me as well, and that can be your little commercial. And just it could even be part of your trailer, but just make it really short, concise. Because when I'm listening to a podcast, I'm done listening to you this episode. And I'm at the gym. I got 30 more minutes on the bike. What am I going to do now? Oh, right. Steve's podcast comes up. Hey, it's Steve, and I have this new podcast, blah, blah, blah. Come over here and click here and listen to my latest episode. I'm going to be on my phone going click and continue riding the bike, and I'm listening to you. And now I'm following you. Right. So, and then do that for other podcasters from your perspective. Build a community. Yeah. When you have a guest on and they have a show, get them to do the same for you. And then promote them.
What does that look like again? It's just kind of like we're talking like 20, 30 seconds or 15 or like kind of a how.
Typical radio commercial that you'd hear on the radio. They're not like 2 minutes, right? They're short.
15 to 30 seconds. Size.
Again, who is the podcast for? Why should I care? Who are you? What's the name of the show? And maybe what's your website? Or where do I find you? That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. That's it.
I'll do that. Yeah. And I like that idea of paying it forward too, because, I appreciate this is a new podcast. You're getting into the game. This conversation was golden for me, and any promotion like that is more than I would have ever expected. So paying it forward. I like how you could do that for other people as well.
Yeah. So 2 of my shows combined is over 100,000 listens. So if you want to get in front of 100,000 people for your show, talk about a great way to launch your podcast, right?
Right.
You're not starting with 0. There's 100,000 listeners here going, tell me more about Steve. I want to know more about Steve.
Right.
And then pay that forward in the future for somebody else that you meet. Do the same for them. Yeah. Help them out.
Yeah.
You could do that.
For sure.
You're gonna start off so well, Steve.
I'm big on karma.
It's great.
I'm big on karma, man. Paying it forward and all that. That's okay, cool. Yeah, now I've got a head spinning full of things to do, and I got to start putting a trailer and a commercial together.
Okay, so before we go, Steve, where do people find you online, social media, wherever? People can't wait to hear your podcast. They want to connect with you as you travel the world. Where do we go, and how do we do that?
Well, the podcast will be at theroninmindset.com.
Beautiful.
Got
good
that
website.
Domain. Got the domain and all that. And then most all of my socials are just my name, Steve Didier. It's Didier. So I think Twitter is Steve Didier _. I think Instagram might be Steve _Didier. Facebook is Steve Didier. YouTube is Steve Didier.
Good.
TikTok is Steve Didier. So yeah.
Okay. So we'll have all those links in the show notes.
Yeah.
Everybody can go to the show notes and find there. Steve, I am thrilled with this conversation. I am excited for you. I am equally as excited. I don't know what I'm going to do for the rest of the afternoon. So it's great. It's great to have you here. I know you need to get some rest, but I really appreciate you spending time, and great questions, by the way.
Well, I appreciate your question. I appreciate all your input. The guy where I am at in my podcast journey, getting to have this conversation with the guy who's got 1,000 episodes under his belt is golden. So, thank you. That was amazing.
Awesome. Okay. Amazing. We'll talk again soon. Okay.
All right.
Keep me up to date and set up that buy me a coffee so I can send you $5. Okay.
I will.
Do it.
Thanks,
Do
Dave.
it. Okay. Hey, it's Dave jumping on here at the end. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for listening to the How to Podcast series. Putting this out there for you. You're starting a podcast and you're like, Dave, the technology is giving me a headache. This editing thing is, I don't know, it's banana pants. I can't figure it all out. And you're thinking, if there was somebody who could help me with my podcast, I would pay them to do the editing for me. Guess what? I'm actually doing that. I have clients now, past guests who've been on the show on one of my other podcasts, on this podcast. I'm doing some podcast consulting. I'm doing podcast editing. I'm helping with people launching their podcast, getting it, all the technology stuff, all getting your podcast in all the players, helping you with your YouTube channel, your website. Oh, it just goes on and on. It goes on and on. And I would love to help you. So instead of going to Fiverr or Upwork, I've been on there. I keep trying to get on for jobs and nobody's paying attention to me. And I need attention. I would rather work with you as a listener of the show. So here's what I'm saying. Go to howtopodcast.ca, leave me a voice message, tell me what you need, and let's work out something that works for you and your budget. And if you need full service or you just need something quick like a drive-through type service, I'm there for you. I got you. And if you like what you hear on any of my 7 podcasts, I can do that for you. I can. And I'd love to work with you because you are amazing. And I'm there to help you, whatever you need. howtopodcast.ca. Reach out, let me know what I can do to help you with your podcast. Thank you for listening. Catch you on the next episode. Take care.